Been a long-haul driver for many years now. I have a fair bit of experience, so I am no stranger to driving along stretches of highway at nighttime that seem to be never-ending. This was one of those nights. Nothing out of the ordinary at all. That night, I was heading east, out on I-40. I have driven down here so many times that it is like second nature. Honestly, it's the kind of route that gets monotonous after a while. Well, I guess they all do eventually. All I had was silence and the hum of the engine. After driving for what seemed like forever, but what was probably only a few hours, I started to feel really tired. I had drank a coffee not long ago, but it was not even having an effect on me anymore. I had no idea how long I had truly been awake for, which is definitely a big no-no. I was getting sloppy, and I should have been more prepared for sure. I don't know. That whole day just felt off for some reason, even before anything happened. Luckily for me, I seemed to be close to some kind of small town or settlement fairly nearby. There was a sign which I think said Harrington or Hickory or something beginning with an H, if I remember correctly. I figured, why not? It's close. I will eat and have a quick power nap, and then I can head back on my way. The road heading into the town was pretty narrow, just barely wide enough for my rig really. Lots of trees on either side that made me feel really claustrophobic. They cast these big shadows, which made visibility a bitch. There wasn't all that much to see though, I suppose, just empty stretches of road. Did not seem like anyone was out this way, this late. Nothing but silence around. I was coming up to something, because I spotted the faint outlines of buildings just up ahead. I pulled in, and parked outside a small general store. The place looked like it had not seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. The building itself was old, but you could tell it had been built to last. That kind of thing was comforting to me in a weird way. Seeing these old buildings stand the test of time. I don't know, it just made me feel safe, I guess. The front door was a little warped, but it opened easily enough. A chime rang above me when I entered. Inside, it was so quiet. Too quiet. There was something unsettling about the stillness of the store. The aisles were filled with dusty cans, jars, and boxes. Their labels were all fading away from age. Looked like no one had ordered any new stock for years. The shelves were neatly stocked though, like someone had taken great care in organizing them. Aside from the shoddiness out front and the fading labels, the place seemed almost like it was frozen in time. I did not see anyone at first, so I wandered around for a moment, just looking for coffee or any kind of stimulant that would help me when I woke up from my nap. That is when I noticed a man standing behind the counter, not moving. He was tall, but not remarkable. His face, though, it was blank. His eyes were open wide, but he was not blinking. Looked like your average, old southern guy. This sounds like an odd thing to notice, but it seemed like he wasn't even breathing. Like, I heard zero noise coming from him. Did not see his chest moving up and down or anything. He just stood there, staring at me. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just a quiet guy. They probably don't get many visitors out this far, especially at a weird time like this, so maybe he was just on guard. These type of folk tend to keep to themselves and who they know. I asked if he had any coffee, and after what felt like an eternity, he nodded slowly. He did not even say a word to me. His head did not move, just his eyes, slowly following me as I walked to the coffee machine. I could not help but feel like I was being watched. I made the coffee and stood there. I was just trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. The door jingled behind me. A woman had entered. She was older, maybe in her late 60s, dressed in a floral print dress. She looked like someone's grandmother, but something about her eyes, again, just empty. There was no emotion in her face, just this vacant stare. I really don't know how to describe it better than that. She stood for a second and then walked over to me. In a soft voice, she asked me if I was just passing through or planning to stay the rest of the night. I just nodded politely and said that I was stopping for a small break before heading back out onto the road. She was really stiff in her movements, like There was no fluidity at all. She moved in stages. It sounds obvious now, but at the time, I just thought that she might be disabled, and I did not want to say anything wrong or get attacked for picking on a disabled person. She shot a smile at me. Not quickly though. It was slow to appear. Again, I thought that she might have some sort of learning difficulty. Then she spoke to me again. She told me I should stay for a while. You'll find that we don't get many visitors. You should rest. We have a lovely motel just down the street. Okay, I guess she's just being polite. Maybe excited at seeing someone new for the first time in who knows how long. Small towns are generally known for their hospitality, right? I gave her a polite smile, but was not interested in sticking around for too long. I didn't need a motel. I was just taking a quick break. I'm good for now. Just needed some coffee. But she insisted. It's the least we can do, dear. It's not every day we have someone passing through. She stared at me as if waiting for me to agree. There was also this weird delay in her responses and reactions, uncomfortably long sometimes, like she needed time to process whatever I was saying. The motel is very nice. You should stay. I started to feel more uncomfortable now. There was something wrong about the way she was speaking, like she was not hearing me, or maybe she just did not care. She wasn't taking no for an answer anyway. I told her thanks, but I'm good, and tried to force a polite smile. She finally nodded, but her eyes did not leave mine. She seemed almost disappointed, but just as quickly, her face returned to its blank expression, as if nothing had happened. I did not waste any time. I finished my coffee, grabbed my things, and stepped outside. When I looked down the street, I saw a few people walking. They were all dressed in different clothes, but they walked with the same pace, the same robotic rhythm. Their eyes just fixed ahead. No one acknowledged me at all. It was as if they were all on a schedule. I started walking back to my truck when a man approached me. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a dirty coat. He looked normal enough at first, but his eyes again, that same empty stare, that same delayed, almost mechanical movement and reaction. You shouldn't leave, he said. People like you don't pass through here. I stood there frozen, not knowing what to say. Did he mean that people like me don't pass through here often? With how weird everyone had been so far, I genuinely could not tell if he messed up his sentence or if that was some kind of ominous threat. I thought I might have walked into some inbred hick town where no one knows how to socialize properly. His eyes were wide, almost too wide. It felt like he wasn't entirely there, like he was reading from a script when he was talking. The strange thing was, he did not look threatening. He just looked like someone's grandfather, the kind of person who had a heart of gold and would tease you, but then tell you crazy stories from his youth. The way he said those words felt off, like there was something I did not understand. I could feel my heart rate picking up. The silence around me was deafening. I glanced over my shoulder. More people were out now, wandering down the street. It wasn't late, but in a town like this, it seemed so weird for people to be casually walking the street this late. They were all walking in that same unnatural rhythm. Their faces were all pale and expressionless and bland, like they'd been chiseled from stone. I could not shake the feeling that they were all watching me. I told him I really needed to go. Even without the coffee, I felt wide awake now. I tried to sound casual. I could barely look into his eyes. His stare was so intense and would not break from me. He didn't seem to hear me. For a second, I swore I saw a flash behind his eyes. Something flicker like he was acknowledging or thinking. Just a second, and then it was gone. You'll want to stay, he said. The motel is just down the road, and it's very quiet. We don't get many visitors, and we prefer to keep it that way. You will be safe here. Safe? What does he mean by safe? His insistence was beginning to make my skin crawl. I knew I needed to get out of there. No, I'm really fine, I said. I've got to keep going. I have a deadline to meet. He did not step aside. In fact, he seemed to move closer, a little too close. He smelled stale like old dust and aged paper. It was a foul smell, and I almost instinctively covered my nose. He smiled again. "It's best to stay. You really shouldn't leave." I made a snap decision. I shoved past him. I ignored the way his hands reached out, almost as if to stop me. I had to get to my truck, but as I turned, I realized something worse. Everyone else was staring at me now. They had stopped in their tracks, standing motionless in the street, all eyes locked onto me. I felt like I was being judged, almost like they were waiting for something. I quickened my pace, headed straight for my truck. I could hear the soft shuffle of footsteps behind me. When I reached my truck, I noticed something even more unsettling. The man from inside the store, the one who had barely said a word to me, was standing at the edge of the lot, staring. His eyes had not blinked once. He was simply watching me like a mannequin. I got into the cab as quickly as I could. There was a faint noise, like something scratching against the door. I glanced up and saw a woman standing next to the truck now, peering through the window at me. Her face was pressed up against the glass, her expression still blank, but she was not moving. Her eyes were locked onto mine, but there was something wrong about them. The longer I stared, the more I realized that her pupils were too dilated, too wide. I threw the truck into gear and started to pull out of the parking lot. But just as I passed the first streetlight, the feeling hit me. The unmistakable sense that I was being followed. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw several figures moving behind me. Too many of them to count, all coming out of the shadows of the buildings. They were walking toward me, their strides synchronized. My foot slammed down harder on the accelerator, but as I reached the intersection, the light turned red. I cursed under my breath and slowed, but not by much. I did not want to stop. Just then, I heard a bang on my window. I jumped, instinctively swerving the truck just enough to make it scrape against the curb. I looked over to see a man, one of the ones who had been walking in that eerie, mechanical way. He had slammed his hand against the window. He was not smiling. His face was twisted with a look of fury I had not expected. The man banged the window again, harder this time, and I could see his teeth through the glass. They were bared, sharp, like a wild animal. I did not wait for him to do it again. I threw the truck into reverse, slamming my foot down on the gas. All I could think was, I need to get out of here. I could hear footsteps pounding behind me as I tore down the road. I glanced in my mirror and saw them. A whole line of people running toward me. They were all pounding their feet in unison. They were not moving like regular people. There was something unnatural about their pace. Faster, more desperate. People this old should not have been able to run this fast. Then, a man appeared out of nowhere, really close to me, in front. He was running straight at the truck. I slammed on the brakes just in time to avoid hitting him, but he lunged at the side of his truck, his hands scraping at the door. I swerved left to avoid him, barely avoiding swerving into a ditch. I did not stop until I hit the next town, about 15 miles away, I think. I was not in any danger of falling asleep at the wheel the whole way. The adrenaline made sure of that. When I tried to report what happened, the sheriff looked at me like I was crazy. They had heard of the town before, but it was so small, they did not believe what I was saying. They were kind of pissed off and said that they would arrest me for wasting police time, that I was just pulling a stupid prank. I told them I was serious, and they told me no actual crime had taken place and there was no evidence for it, so I was shit out of luck. It has been months since then, and I've passed that stretch of highway multiple times, but I have never been brave enough to stop by there again. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. Fuck it. Let me see if I can spin one of my uncle's yarns. I remember when he told me about funerals. Just to avoid confusion, I'm going to refer to everyone by these names: Great Grandma Dorothy, uncle, grandpa and grandma, and Miss Clementine. Again, this is a tall tale. When uncle was still young, great-grandma Dorothy passed away. Everyone had been dreading her death, not only because they loved her, which they did, but because she had requested a traditional funeral, which was a lot of work. But in accordance with her wishes, grandpa and grandma held a wake in their home and invited everybody. The women all brought flowers and watched over the body in shifts for 24 hours. All of the doors and windows had to remain open the whole time, so the men watched the house during that time to keep animals from wandering in. Meanwhile, a couple of men worked on making a simple coffin. After 24 hours, they laid great-grandma Dorothy's body in the coffin and said a short prayer. Then they looked the coffin out of the house. The men carried it to the family plot, where great-grandpa was buried, and laid great-grandma Dorothy to rest beside him. And that was that, or so they thought. Not long after though, Grandpa starts complaining that he's getting attacks of the old hag. If you don't know what that is, it's sort of like sleep paralysis, only you physically feel like somebody is sitting on your chest and you can't breathe or move. This turns into a nightly occurrence. They get worse over time, until one night, Grandma wakes up with Grandpa thrashing violently in bed next to her. He is moaning and shaking, and Grandma flips on the light to find his face is turning blue. She screams at the top of her lungs and starts praying. She thinks Grandpa is a goner. But then, he takes a huge gasp of air and stops shaking. They both manage to calm down a bit. By this point, Uncle is wide awake, standing in their doorway. He listens as Grandpa describes the experience of the old hag. He is still shaking a bit as he talks. Says that while he struggled to breathe, he saw an apparition watching him from the corner of the room. It was great-grandma Dorothy. Grandma instantly freaks out when she hears this. She was incredibly superstitious and decides that they need to talk to Miss Clementine right away. I don't know what you would call Miss Clementine really. Uncle just called her a wise woman. She was old as dirt though, and lived alone, in this tiny house near the woods, way off away from everyone. Uncle, being the oldest, gets sent off to ask her for advice. So now it's the dead of night. Uncle has just heard that great-grandma Dorothy is apparently back from beyond the grave, and he is trudging out in the middle of nowhere, heading even further out into the sticks. Needless to say, he is thoroughly spooked by the time he finally finds Miss Clementine. He manages to get there without pissing his pants, but damned if the old lady is not expecting him. She is standing in her doorway, with her hands on her hips like Uncle is late. Then she tells him what has been going on. Apparently, great-grandma Dorothy has been appearing to her for the past few nights, and the two have been doing some talking. Your folks botched the funeral, Miss Clementine says. Uncle asks how. Miss Clementine rambles in her creaky voice. Well, they had the wake, that was good, and they built a decent coffin, which was only right, and they buried her in the family plot, as they should have. Uncle is wishing he'd stayed in bed. She continues, but they forgot one thing. You always carry the body out of the house, feet first. Uncle is like, what the fuck, that's stupid. But according to Miss Clementine, great-grandma Dorothy's coffin had been carried out head first, which apparently is no good for a spirit. Head first always ensures a haunting, she says, but it's easy enough to fix, so she explains to Uncle what he has to do. Then he hurries back home and tells his parents what Miss Clementine told him. Fast forward a week, and the whole family is back at the house. The women, the men, my grandpa, and my uncle all go down to great-grandma Dorothy's grave. Together, the men open the grave back up until the coffin is exposed. Then Grandpa passes around a bowl of salt, and everyone takes turns, sprinkling a bit over the coffin. Even my dad, who was only a wee lad at the time, remembers this bit. Then the men fill the grave in again, and everyone disperses back to their homes. After that, no more old hag, no more apparitions, and no more traditional funerals, lol. But Uncle took a valuable lesson away from the event. This is the point where he'd lean in close and whisper the words, "Don't fuck with the dead kiddo." Keck. Thanks, Unc. I used to live in Russian suburbs when I was a snotty 12-year-old, and in an area which was fucked up by design. There was a huge ass prison right around the corner, a little city of garages with who knows what inside, corners and little passages, which were filled with heroin needles, nearly abandoned old residential buildings. The mother of all trash heaps, partially filled with extremely volatile stuff and so on. What is a grown, sane man's disaster is an interesting adventure for an innocent kid in these parts. So me and my group of friends used to explore this post-apocalyptic wonderland thoroughly. One day, we decided to fuck around in one particularly fucked up part of the zone, a really shabby, industrial/residential settlement, which is practically a ghost town. So, we run around, search for cool shit, and arrive at some big 15 or so story building. We get up there, of course, and as we climb the staircase, we hear only our breathing and footsteps. Otherwise, it is dead fucking silence in there. I am sure there were people living there, but it seems like they were mostly gloomy old farts. So we get up as far as possible, get disappointed when we realize that there is no way to get to the roof, and decide we are going to get down and search for some store to get something to eat. I look out of one window, which gives a good overview over the district, and see that not far from the building, there seems to be some commotion. Not thinking too long, I decide I will look what is up. My stupid friends decide they have had enough and leave, so I take off on my own. The place where some people collected, you already could consider the March of 10 people as a demonstration in those parts, was some backyard of some store. Police tape everywhere. I see some woman speaking to a policeman, and she is pale, like she saw her child getting torn to shreds. I decide I want to know what really happened back there, and sneak my way through the tape, using some cars as hiding. As I inch closer, heart pounding like a drum, I peek around the last car. There, in the middle of the yard, lies a body, a man, sprawled out like a rag doll, arms twisted at odd angles. Even from a distance, I can tell he's dead. His face is swollen, bluish, and something dark has pulled around his head. I freeze for a moment. All the curiosity that brought me here evaporates, replaced by a cold weight in my gut. I want to run, but my feet won't move. The cops are talking in low voices, one of them pointing at something near the man's body. A syringe. Makes sense. Plenty of junkies around here. Overdose, I think. But then I hear something that makes my stomach turn. Not just drugs. One officer mutters to another. He did not die here. Someone dumped him. Dumped him? My breath catches. I press myself against the car, brain racing. This isn't just some random junkie passing out. Someone left him here. Someone who did not want him to be found elsewhere. The pale woman is crying now, hands shaking as she speaks to the police. I strain to hear, but I only catch a few words. He came home late. Someone was watching him. I don't want to hear more. My chest feels tight, and suddenly, I realize how stupid I was to come here alone. I slip away from the scene, my head buzzing with thoughts. Was it some gang thing, a deal gone wrong? Or worse, something random, something that could happen to anyone? That night I can't sleep. Every sound outside makes me jump. I keep thinking about that dead man, about whoever moved his body, like he was just another piece of trash in this broken part of town. I never went back to that place, not alone, not ever. I will contribute a story of something that happened to me a few years ago. This is 100% true, and I have never hallucinated or seen anything like this before in my life. Be around 8 p.m. Late fall in eastern Canada, very dark outside. Busy day working and get home. Remember that I was expecting mail. Plan on running out to mailbox real quick. Leave dogs inside. Don't want them to run off, chasing some random animal like they always do. Grab flashlight and hunting knife. Very common to run into wild animals out here, including bears. Better safe than sorry. Go outside and start walking down long driveway. Cut down center of my lawn towards mailboxes in front of my neighbor's house, drawn picture included. To this point, I have had a flashlight in my hand but was pointing it at my feet to watch out for the storm drain located at the property line. Hop over storm drain and proceed to mailbox. At this very moment, I sense something in my peripheral vision. I quickly snap my flashlight to my left. the sudden burst of luminance swiftly revealed a short and disfigured abomination. Was very short, maybe 4 feet tall, and had a large head with no visible orifices except for 2 largely separated jet black eyes. Its lower body was severely disfigured and looked like it had just crawled out of hell. This thing looked hellish and was making a deep gut gurgling noise while giving off the illusion that it was inching closer to me. In split seconds, I had scanned this fucking thing from head to toe and then made deep eye contact with it. I then lost all control of myself and released a loud-ass shriek and bolted in the opposite direction as fast as my legs could possibly allow. This was the first time I have ever encountered anything so paranormal, and this experience definitely changed my outlook on things. I am no longer skeptical when I read other stories, such as these found on X, and I now realize that there are many things out there in the world that humanity is clueless about. Whatever the fuck it was I saw, it surely had the final laugh as I ran like a dog with its tail between its legs. I can also say this is the only time I have ever lost complete control of myself and ran from something without thinking. This shit was fucking unreal. Back in the day, 2010-ish, worked as an armed guard for Section 8 housing complex. During the summer, the afternoon shift had a lot of activity. Working during winter, so slow that I'm stuck on dispatch duty and only one officer on patrol. No one goes on patrol without partner, and there is literally no one outside at 1 AM and 10 below zero. Taking turns watching CCTV and Hulu, Netflix, etc. Suddenly hear a loud-ass crash from building office waiting room. Specifically, hear door slam shut and can hear the leftover Halloween decoration on the door making noise. Adrenaline.jpg. Look at the other guard, and he is spooked as fuck. Other guard is a 2-time Iraq vet and not easily spooked as long as I've worked with him. He draws his weapon and runs toward the front of the office. I draw my weapon and follow him. We clear the entire front office area, but there is no one there. What the fuck? I tell him I want to clear the back area. Clear out break room, elevator control room, storage room, nothing. Check the CCTV, and there is nothing but the 2 of us, looking like morons. Did not log anything, report anything, or mention to anyone else, because not only did we not have any evidence, but they would have been like, yeah, these guys are stupid. Fast forward to the next winter, and pretty much the exact same thing happened. Same exact scenario, same exact people involved. It creeps me out because it was, without a doubt, that exact door and decoration that we heard, and the sound was of that specific door closing, even though the door was already deadbolted since the office was closed. After years of working there, you could tell by sound which door was being opened/closed, just like you can after years of living in the same house. Be me, 17 years old, 2 years ago, driving home from work in my truck. For context, I live in a rural-ish area of Western Canada and work in a bar. This story was at about 11 at night, and in a remote enough area that there were no streetlights, a few buildings, and cows, horses, and fields, etc. Driving along, listening to music, typical day. See a large RV on the side of the road, nobody around it, emergency lights on. Spidey sense go off the charts. All of my instincts tell me to stay the fuck away. Whatever is going on here is not going to be fun for me. Keep driving a few minutes. Decide to turn around. Maybe someone is hurt or needs help. I gotta be a good guy. I can take care of myself if something goes wrong, etc. Turn around and head back. Park on the other side of the road from the RV. Walk across the road and go to the passenger side of the RV. Door is open and no one is there. Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll plays on the radio. I knock on the door. Hello? Anyone there? No answer. Only the sound of the radio playing softly. Knock again. Call for anyone inside. No answer. Feel intense urge to run. Calm myself. I'm a man. I can fight whatever tries to hurt me. It's all good. I decide to step in to make sure no one OD'd or anything. Take one step inside trailer. Literally, the second my foot hits the floor of the thing, The music doubles or triples in volume, deafeningly loud. It was the most intense jump scare of my whole life. Turn around and bolt back to the truck. The second I run around the corner of the RV, I see my truck. All the doors are wide open. No breeze. No one around for 2 to 3 miles at least. Literally stand in the middle of the road, too scared to move. Know something happened to my truck, so I don't want to get close to it, but also don't want to go back to spooky trailer. See nothing in truck, say fuck it. Drive home at 20k over the limit. Nothing else came of it. Sorry if it's anticlimactic.